Despite some backlash from big business and industry, the federal government is confident the public will see the benefit of the carbon tax. The tax begins next week at the beginning of the financial year. Climate Change Minister Greg Combet joins us now from Canberra. Good morning, Minister. Thanks for your time. Now, a recent poll by the Climate Institute has found 66% of those surveyed say they'll be worse off financially because of the carbon tax. Is that an indication that the government has failed to sell the compensation associated with this tax?
Well, there's a very significant compensation assistance package for households, and I guess it's partly a measure that in the political debate we've had, people are concerned. But the fact of the matter is that if you take family households, for example, 98% of households that have families who have an income of $150,000 will receive some assistance. 75% of families who earn $150,000 will receive assistance that equates to the expected price impact on them, and half of those households, those families, will receive assistance of about 20% in excess of the impact on them. So it's a strong household assistance package that averages $10.10 a week across every household in Australia.
Should the advertising campaign that the government put in place have included the words carbon tax in order for people to know that the compensation they were receiving was related to the carbon tax?
Well, if you go back to your first question, it's a matter that not a lot of people know, obviously, the assistance that's coming. So we're running some advertising to alert them to the fact that it is coming. In fact, many households, many pensioners, many families who receive family tax benefits and now self-funded retirees are receiving assistance right now. So we're alerting them to that fact, and they can go to the website to find out exactly what it is. And what we are talking about for a pensioner, for example, is a 1.7% increase in the pension to meet an expected price impact of 0.7, and we're paying the first 9 months of next year's pension increase up front. So for a single pensioner, $250 is going into their accounts right now.
The opposition, particularly the small business spokesperson, have put out a flyer campaign this morning. The carbon tax on dry cleaners, carbon tax in restaurants, saying higher energy prices will mean it will cost us more to run our equipment, and we'll pass those price increases on to you as consumers. Is that a more effective way of selling the anti-carbon tax message than the government has tried to sell the pro-carbon tax message?
Well, it's just alarmist and a continuing scare campaign. You've got to bear in mind, Karina, that it's well under 500 companies at the national level who will have the liability to pay the carbon price, and what they'll have to do is to purchase a permit for every tonne of greenhouse gas that they emit, and that provides them a financial incentive to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, so that small businesses don't have direct liability. They don't have to fill out any new forms. Electricity prices will be affected, but for example, for a typical small business, electricity is about 2% of their bill. It'll be affected. The electricity price will go up by about and represent about a 0.2% increase in their costs, which for a typical small business is about $5 a week, and that's not a large amount, and it can be passed through in very, very slight price increases, and that's why we deliver a lot of the revenue from the carbon price into the hands of households through tax cuts, pension increases and family tax benefit improvements. But to run around like the Liberals, exaggerating the way they have, people will find them out, because there's not going to be anywhere near the impact that Tony Abbott has been indicating.
I want to ask you quickly about local councils. How many local councils will be affected and have to pay the carbon tax?
As at the current information that's available to the Clean Energy Regulator, only 34 councils out of the 559 in Australia will have a direct liability under the carbon price mechanism.
So originally you thought it would be more than 100 councils. Will that have any adverse impact on the projected revenue from the carbon tax to the government?
No, it won't. It's you know, the councils themselves are relative to, for example, to a coal-fired electricity station, certainly much smaller emitters. And you know, we've got a lot of confidence in the modelling that has been done, and we've endeavoured to make sure that the rules are as easy as possible for councils to work with. And we've had several years now in total of discussion with local governments, and we believe that they have a pretty good picture of what's required. And really, they're liable under the mechanism where they've got very large landfill operations, and if they cover those landfills, capture the methane gas, they can use that methane gas to generate electricity, for example, but also to remove themselves from potentially from liability under the carbon price. So that's exactly how the thing's intended to work. It creates an incentive to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions and use things like methane gas in a far more useful economic way.
Have any of your colleagues urged you to lower the carbon price? We know that you've held firm on that $23 a tonne price.
No, and I know it's been debated a lot, but really when you look at it in the international context, the important comparator is this. It's the trade-exposed high emissions industries like cement manufacturing or steel making that are very important because they're trading internationally, competing against imports, working in export markets, and the government is offsetting their carbon price liability to an average of 95%. That means 95% of their permits will be provided free on average. That reduces their effective carbon price to just $1.30 a tonne. And when you're talking about carbon prices internationally, that's the very important comparator because that's what's happening in the international marketplace that many of our trade-exposed industries are active in.
Minister, we're very much running out of time. I just wanted to ask you very quickly and finally that you've got a deadline of June 30 to negotiate contracts for the closure of 2,000 megawatts of coal-fired power generation by 2020. Are you still going to meet that deadline?
Well, that those negotiations are undergoing at the moment. They're commercial in confidence. It's not appropriate for me to comment about the content of them, but our public policy position is to try and conclude them by June the 30th, and we'll have something to say about that in coming days.
Minister Greg Combet, thank you very much for your time this morning.
And thank you, Karina, for having me on.